It just so happened that NFWF, which is National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, holds an annual, issues an annual request for proposals under its Chesapeake Bay Stewardship Fund, which is one of the programs that I work with, and it falls right on top of this time. So this was really great timing. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And what, in response to our last association's meeting and just some conversation about, gosh, we don't need Chesapeake Bay-wide presentations, we really need things that really kind of bring it home to Spring Creek. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you just a little bit of background about NFWF, which some of you know well and others of you may not. I'm going to tell you what my relationship with NFWF is, and then we're going to look at what NFWF's strategic business plan is for investment, because really it's a grant-making organization, and what that investment looks like across the Bay, because that kind of gives us a context for what the investments have been in Spring Creek and what the opportunities are in Spring Creek. So that's kind of the order of how I'd like to talk about it. And the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation is just another 501c3. The difference is that Congress established it very specifically in 1984, which is actually the year I graduated from Virginia Tech. And I actually remember when this was established because it was very exciting, because it basically was going to, the federal agencies that had all been doing their own things everywhere, you know, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service under Department of Interior and USDA and EPA, they had all been kind of cherry-picking projects for investing what environmental conservation funds they had for protection and restoration. So Congress said that's a little bit too willy-nilly. We really need a way to kind of have it more strategically invested so that you know, a non-governmental entity can work on our interests. So it turns out now, because of that original federal partnership for NFWF, it's one of the largest conservation grant-making organizations. And really, it's not like a Heinz Foundation or William Penn Foundation that have multiple philanthropies. This is really about species, habitat, water quality. And because Congress set it up to be a non-federal entity, it gave it the latitude to bring in other private sector partners. So when you hear, you know, is Walmart? Yeah. When you hear Walmart or FedEx say, we have sustainability funds and we're supporting conservation in America, one of the ways that they do it is that they put funds, they contract to NFWF their funds, and then NFWF can take these private sector funds and they can leverage it against the federal dollars. So often when people get grants, they may be getting federal dollars that are coming through NFWF, but it's often packaged within, you know, the fact that these corporate interests that are continuing to grow. And CSX, I don't know if they're up there, but CSX has become a really big partner, and they're, you know, the trained people. And what's cool about that is that they've, in kind, become a big way that large shipments have gotten up and down the East Coast. For example, fossilized oysters that have been found in mines in Florida, or quarries in Florida, are coming up to Maryland to seed new oyster beds. And so CSX is cash and services. So, okay, so my relationship with NFWF is that when they wanted somebody in the field to do, I mean, they've got a lot of people in Washington and their other headquarter offices around the country. Those people are cranking out contracts, reviewing proposals, you know, working with the partners to get money. What they haven't had is they haven't had people in the field to kind of work more in relationship with the grantees. And so they wanted to hire somebody to kind of be on the landscape to help queue up projects that were in support of their strategic interest, and to also kind of check in with the grantees to see how they were monitoring their progress. And what they've learned in this model is that sometimes, and I get this big time because I've received grants, sometimes some of the grantees are more willing to talk to a field person who's not the funder about problems. And the funder cares tremendously about things that are either working well and things that aren't working well, because that really informs them on how they fund the next project. They are equally interested in those things. They're not disappointed when things don't work well. A lot of environmental restoration protection. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And so because I lived here and they were willing to support me living here, I had to incorporate as an LLC to enter into contract with NFWF. And I work 100% with NFWF. And basically, the programs, they've got hundreds and hundreds of grants programs. Unbelievable, different kinds of grants. But regionally, the two that I work with, when I started, it was very specifically the Chesapeake-based Stewardship Fund, which I'll talk more about today because that's really the one that most affects this area. And now, with money that William Penn Foundation has recently put into the mix, like $35 million for the Delaware Basin, National Fish and Wildlife Foundation is now a partner with William Penn for doing a Delaware River Restoration Fund. So I have learned more about New Jersey than I ever cared to. And I've got to tell you, it's really awesome because it's more beautiful than I ever expected. So in the family of Chesapeake-based Stewardship Fund grants, there are essentially three categories. And I'm going to talk very specifically about people in the room who've had some of these grants in a minute. But we have an annual appeal for these. And you can see that we have a request for proposals, or RFP, out right now that has a May 15th deadline. So it really makes this conversation really timely. And the types of grants we have, the small watershed grants, they're really kind of place-specific or place-based. And we call these the small watershed grants in part because they're typically under $200,000 that NFWF will fund. The full budget might be a lot more than that, but it means the partners are getting the money from elsewhere. And the partners are expected to come up with 25% of the cost. So if you wanted $200,000, you have to come up with roughly the project. You have to show that you have up to $260,000. Excuse me. That you have an additional $60,000 to invest into the project to be eligible for that $200,000. The second category of grants really kind of came around in response to knowing that we had to accelerate these activities across the landscape to get water quality. Good morning. That we had to, this larger grant program came around because we knew that to meet a lot of the deadlines around the Chesapeake Bay restoration, that we had to accelerate getting practices on the ground and that we need to look for new ways to do it. And so when you see the word innovative, it means a lot of things to different people, but for National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, it means that you've got something that you think is really promising that you're going to do differently to get much better conservation on the ground. And for some people, it might be a widget, something new that they're doing in terms of the practice. And for other people, it might be forging new partnerships and finding new ways to deliver information. So innovation is broadly around, saying we saw something out in Oregon or in, Western Pennsylvania that we think has promise here and we want to try it here. But this one has a one-to-one, like a 50-50 match. So when you ask for $500,000 somewhere, there's got to be $500,000 coming into the project. And when NFWF says a match, it could be cash, it could be state grants, it could be in-kind services, it could be people around the table working as volunteers on the project. Both of these grants are used in this community, and I'll show you how in a minute. This one is kind of the little one that Ann and I have dreamed about our municipal partners in particular going after at some point, right, Ann? Because this one, these used to be called walk-up grants, and literally, particularly for municipalities, but non-government organizations are also eligible for them. This is a way that if a municipality has a problem or an idea and they want to buy some technical assistance, they can literally go to this list of technical assistance providers that have been pre-approved by NFWF, and there's a bunch of them across Pennsylvania, and say, we're really interested in fixing this flooding problem and we think we need help figuring out how to do it. And then this technical assistance provider can ask NFWF for up to $40,000 and they can do the job. It's usually about a year and a half planning process, but the whole point of the technical assistance grant is to queue up projects so that in the next round, in the next year, they can apply for these bigger projects that are really for implementing practices. So I know Ann's tried to encourage Milesburg to do it. How many have you tried to? We tried to encourage Patton Township to do it. Yeah. But this is a tool that's really used a lot across the states, and for some reason we haven't been able to engage anybody to use it here yet. So I was hired to help kind of carry out the Chesapeake Bay business plan, and what I want you to see on this slide is simply that, for the Chesapeake Bay Stewardship Fund, it's about improving water quality, and that's specifically around sediment and nutrient reductions, recovering species. In this area, it's specifically eastern brook trout, and restoring in-stream habitat and riparian habitat. And that's, a lot of the work that the Spring Creek chapter of TU and Clearwater have been about. And so where we want to drop NFWF investments is right at that where you got that triple point win between those three goals. The only thing I wanted to show you on this was simply that there are kind of, when we get proposals in, we're kind of looking for three things. We're looking at where our high priority targeted watersheds are, which I'm going to show you in a second, and they're the ones that kind of meet that triple point. We're looking for opportunities for supporting innovation on cross-cutting issues, and that's really about how do you drive down costs for conservation, and we're really interested in advancing local government green infrastructure solutions. Okay, so the science that NFWF uses, and this is really this was kind of what was starting kind of in place when I was coming on board and was charged to help do. But basically, NFWF has looked across the geographies of the bay, and they've looked at the stream health data, which is the EPA's IBI data, index of biotic integrity. So that's the aquatic critters. We've looked at the areas that are the least vulnerable to development, because those are going to be an important area to invest. Places where things are built out probably are a little bit harder to make a change in. And we're looking at the nutrient runoff data that EPA has. And so then we're taking kind of the Keystone Species information, and again, in our case, this is eastern brook trout data, and we're overlaying those 4 sets of data, and we come up with kind of a cartoon picture of the whole basin of where our kind of our priority watersheds are. Now, what you need to know, and we tell everybody across the basin, it doesn't mean that there aren't investments outside of these circles. There are, but what it does mean is that within these circles, and here's our circle here. This kind of includes this is actually us here, and I might not have a better map of this in here, but what it's showing is it's showing zones for which we'd like to have increased level investments because of those 4 overlying conservation geographies. They're really a good indication that you can have that triple win with species benefit, habitat benefit, and water quality benefit. And so NFWF has a 20-year plan to kind of take at least 60% of the funds it has to invest every year and get it into these areas where we can see that triple kind of effect. Okay, so what this brings us to is just thinking more about Pennsylvania, and then we'll come down to the local level. Last year in Pennsylvania, we had, I can't remember how many, I think I have it on the next slide, but the stars, which you can hardly see. Is this dim? Can you all see this? Or is it too? It may be that it's too small, but basically, you see a star right here in Center County. These stars are where funds were invested last year, and this star is actually Clearwater Conservancy. They got their first innovative nutrient and sediment reduction grant, which is one of the bigger ones, and Katie Ombalski and the team at Clearwater did a great job in that proposal. It ranked really high. But the little red dots that you see scattered all over, those are investments that NFWF has made since 1999. So when you look in the Spring Creek Watershed here, there's probably a cluster of 8 or 9 different little red dots, okay? Again, I want to just say that this is specifically in the category of the Chesapeake-based Stewardship Fund grants, which are the ones that I work with. There are some other categories that we'll talk about that our local partners have gotten. So this is the list of who got one last year, and This is statewide, just all the Chesapeake-based Stewardship Fund investments that occurred in Pennsylvania. And right here is Clearwater. And what's important to pay attention to, because this is what NFWF's looking for, is that NFWF's outlay on these projects was just under $3 million. But the conservation partners on the ground leveraged almost $4.5 million for those dollars. So, you know, every funder, whether it's the state DEP or community foundation, Center Community Foundation, they like to say, well, we put in $1, but look, we put in $1, but we got $2.5 out of it. And then this price over here is just the total project, and the total of both the award from NFWF and the match from the communities. So in our community, and I had so much fun digging up this data out of the database. This is actually public information. Anybody can go to the NFWF site, it's NFWF.org, and look to see who has gotten grants over the years. Now, I may have missed some, but I think that this is kind of these are the folks that have had grants that have been in some way, on some level, invested in Spring Creek. And on yours, the only thing I couldn't tell with the conservation districts, they're Center County based, so maybe some of the work was in Spring Creek, but maybe it was largely outside of it.
Little Fishing Creek.
Okay.
Most of it.
Okay. So Center County's conservation districts have been more ag based, so they've probably been more in the agricultural areas outside Spring Creek. But no surprise that Clearwater is kind of at the top of the list. When I joined the NFWF process, without them even knowing the fact that Clearwater Conservancy was my home conservancy, they said, man, we wish we had more organizations like Clearwater Conservancy, because they come in with a reasonable budget, they get the work done, and if we had things like that all over the landscape, we'd be thrilled. And that was exciting, and I have to say that since Spring Creek chapter of TU has come into the game with it, and I know you all had one that was older that I don't know, we'll talk about that. They have the same feeling about the TU chapters and this TU chapter in particular, that it's a great organization, it's getting the work done. But I do want to give a real call out here for the conservation districts, because National Fish and Wildlife Foundation has really viewed the Pennsylvania conservation districts as literally the foot soldiers who are getting conservation on the ground. And not only do they do it consistently, but they do it remarkably efficiently, economically. So we might get a proposal from a big organization like Audubon or something like that to do, for $200,000 we'll do X. That same proposal from the conservation district says we're going to get the job done for $80,000, and they do. So there's a real affinity for the way that these county conservation districts have gotten the work done. Okay, I'm not going to click back. What I'm going to do is just share with you a couple things. This spreadsheet, and we might go ahead and put the lights on again because you're going to need it for this next section. This spreadsheet is a list of all of those projects that have taken place in Spring Creek through the years. Now, again, like Ann just noted that ours was actually Little Fishing Creek, and I know they had Penns Creek. So there could be some that the geographies kind of overlay a little bit. It's not all explicitly Spring Creek, but to the best of my knowledge, as I was reading about these projects, it was. And actually, I have one more thing. This second handout is just a full list of each of the projects chronologically through the year. So the spreadsheet is the one that I'm going to look at initially with you. But interestingly, beginning in 2000, that was the earliest one I could find that NFWF had, and you could see that this particular program, the Chesapeake-based Stewardship Fund, really started in 1999. So, way to go! Who was that? Who was directing Clearwater in 2000? That was you, right?
October, but before that it started.
Okay, way to go, Darlene, I guess, or maybe Roxanne was part of this. But when you look at year 2000 on the blue table, Clearwater got its first award without having to put a dollar up. How about that? $34,000 to work on the Spring Creek Management Plan. And then you can just kind of look through the list, going down, let's see, through, we've got, I don't know how many Clearwater. I did not, I'll let you guys do the math. I did not calculate per organization how much they got, but I just showed you the award amount, the match grant, the match amount, and then on the right-hand side is the grant family. So you can see that primarily Clearwater and the district were working in that Chesapeake-based small watershed grants program, which probably at that time there were other names at that time for some of the other ones. But when you get to 2007 and you see that equine nutrient and sediment management program, Penn State's a pretty big player in getting grants from NFWF that are spatially in different places around the state. I know a lot of you through the commission and elsewhere with Matt Royer have heard about the work done with the Conewago. That was something where even when I was at Penn State, that was a pretty big grant that we got to help initiate that process. And so that one was a Penn State one at University Park, but it was taking place in Lancaster, Lebanon, and Dauphin counties. Well, this equine nutrient and sediment management one actually took place in Center County and Lancaster County. And the extension specialists who led it were doing something that was way ahead of their time, actually, because the contribution of equine to the sediment and manure loads, nutrient loads going to the bay were not understood and not accounted for. And they really did a lot to kind of inventory equine. And we're talking about 1 and 2 horse operations where mom and dad got, teenager a horse to keep her from dating boys, those kind of operations even. They did a full inventory. My dad did that. Did yours? It didn't work. It worked for my sister. It didn't work for me. So they inventoried because it was clear that these horse operations, even little ones, were a much bigger input to the system that were previously not counted. So in the Spring Creek Watershed, I don't have the specific data, but you can look this one up, and there's a great report on the influence of equine on water quality, and Center County and Spring Creek Watershed were in that study. The 2008 one that you see, Spring Creek Restoration by TU, if you look over on the right, that one came through a category called Bring Back the Natives and More Fish, which is another category of grants that's national. So looking down this list again, I was surprised. I didn't know UAJA had a grant from NFWF.
Yeah, that's the grant that never ends.
The Slab Cabin Marsh and Kissinger Meadows.
Yeah.
And that was in a family of grants that I didn't know, the 5-Star and Nature Restoration Trust. And so what I learned, I knew that municipalities were eligible for grants, but it turns out authorities are too, so that's great. Is there anything, have you had a wonderful experience with them?
They have been the fun part of
Oh,
that,
good, okay.
because they've been so flexible as we have dealt with all of the regulatory garbage. So, just because you get a grant doesn't mean regulations
Go away, right.
The regulators don't necessarily want what you want, it appears. So, yeah, about that.
So on the flip side, I had forgotten that 2010 Clearwater got a Bring Back the Natives, More Fish grant also to do, I guess that was where is that 152-acre parcel?
And that one would be the Galbert Gap.
Okay, so it's in this area.
Yeah,
Okay.
because it's one of 5 remaining naturally reproducible brook trout habitats.
Okay, great. Okay, the next one I just wanted to flag to you because I know this has been one that's kind of surfaced around the Slab Cabin redesignation as a trout stream, or what is it being redesignated to? Sorry.
It's a class A trust.
Okay.
Now,
Okay, all right.
but it hasn't become an HQ stream.
Okay. So what I want to share with you is this Pennsylvania Unassessed Waters Initiative is something that NFWF is so excited about. And it's something that between NFWF, the Fish and Boat Commission, I think Mellon's got some skin in the game, Mellon Foundation, R.K. Mellon out of Pittsburgh, and the Western Pennsylvania Conservancy, because what this program has meant in areas like the Marcellus Shell area is that they've launched teams of students out to basically assess streams and see if there's trout there. If they get a hit on trout, they can redesignate the stream, and it has, advantages in terms of protecting the stream from what kinds of land disturbing activities happen. So this is a really wonderful mechanism for the Marcellus Shell area. What happened here is the first time that it became more of a burden to the community and trying to figure out how it fits here. But in these, in these forested stream areas where Fish and Boat Commission can genuinely go to DEP and say, we know trout's here, and DEP can redesignate the stream to HQ, that's a really wonderful tool for helping guide better natural gas exploration. So it wasn't until last year when Denny Haymeister told me this was happening, and I thought, when he told me what was going on with Slab Cabin, I actually thought, that can't really be the case. I mean, it wasn't clear to me until last fall what a challenge this particular program would provide a community, an urban community that has so many good things in place on that kind of redesignation to HQ. So you'll see that I guess what I want to say is that that's a statewide program. It was really largely focused in the Marcellus Shell area, but they really want to make sure that they assess every stream. One thing that was confusing to me about this was that the assessing for trout process is different than the assessing for impairment process. And sometimes we say, well, what do you mean these streams are unassessed? They mean they're unassessed for trout. It doesn't mean that they haven't been assessed for meeting their water quality, designated use as water quality standards. So time-wise, where am I? Am I way over yet?
So 20 after 8.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. The only last thing I want to say is that those of you who went to the stormwater management webinar would have received, like the day after, a copy of the RFP that's on the street. It came out that day. This is a request for proposals. And the projects, one thing that I want to point out with the list that I gave you, the one thing that we haven't had is we haven't had strong municipal proposals. We haven't had any municipal proposals from this region. And those are partners that we'd really love to see more proposals from, whether it's a regional government, whether it's a county government, whether it's the municipalities, working independently. We don't want to see it if there's not a compelling project that they have in mind, but I just think that this area hasn't had that investment recently. And last year, as a part of the business plan, we did a huge investment in Blair County, and probably almost $1 million between a couple different partners that are completely benefiting the MS4 communities. So that's pretty much what I wanted to share with you, and thanks for interacting with me during. If you haven't had a chance to look at the RFP, please do. The call-outs are restoring and protecting vital habitats, improving conservation of private lands, and thoroughly improving urban stormwater management.